Legends of Tomorrow Season 3, Episode 4, Phone Home. Now this episode was definitely an homage to all things E.T. They had a million other little references and stuff, but this was a really good episode. I wasn't surprised that I liked it, but I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. Like, I felt like there was a lot more to this episode than I thought it was going to be. I was like, okay, this will be a pretty fun journey to, they go back in time. They're trying to save one of their own team members and Ray. And it seemed like it would be simple enough, but there was a lot of stuff to this. Like, we learned a little bit more about Ray and his time as a child and how, he grew up really not having any friends. He thought the two bullies that were always messing with him were actually his friends, and it was like, they're on the side of the road, and then they watch him walk down the street, and the bullies come up to him. And he's like, "Oh, these are my friends." And it was like, "Well, did you ever rough them up and stuff?" I was like, "No, they just did that to me. We're buddies." And then, it was like, they were just kidding. And then they leave, and it's like, I'm starting to think they weren't kidding. And then, of course, they're riding down the road, and it's like, I can't believe he thinks we're friends. And, he's this little kid who waves and smiles at him and stuff. And it's just like, wow, that's sad. And, Ray's kind of getting a lot of these lessons that he never truly understood from when he was actually a kid. Because he was just that kid who went to school, he did his work, and then that was it. He grew up as, the nerdy guy Ray. And, we learned a lot of stuff about him as a character, with him and the bullies, and then the stuff with his mom where, the part where she's talking to Nate and Maya, and it's like, he's just always bringing home strays and stuff, and he's always just kind of wrapped up and stuck inside of his own head, and he just doesn't kind of get to live life and just does his inventions and stuff. And he was like, he was sad, and, both versions of him were sad. And he was like, she always told me she liked my inventions. And it was just stuff that he was learning about almost some of the fears that his mother had, because he was this kid who just was by himself all the time. So I thought that was interesting. We learned a bit about him. I don't know why they're doing this all the time, but I swear they make Nate, like they force him into the silliest situations. Either he's on drugs or something's going crazy, or he's doing something crazy. Like talking about how hot Ray's mom is, like when she gets out of the car. And I don't know why they even did this. I thought this was such a bad idea for the team. I was like, why are Nate and Amaya even teaming up inside the car? Like, that was just a terrible idea to begin with the issues that they're having. But she gets out of the car, he's like, you didn't tell us your mom was hot. And then Amaya kind of looks over at him, and it was just like, the whole episode was him, like when she opens the door. And the first thing he says is there a cougar on the premises? And it's just like, wow, that's so wrong that he would do that. But definitely funny. Nate was hilarious through the whole episode, and him, going back when he thought he was about to save her because they're getting to the end with the Dominator and everything. That was definitely funny. And she pulled him out. I was like, well, this is weird, but maybe she has a house for Nate. I don't know. But of course, it turns out to be the Dominator. But all of it I thought was really funny with him. They bring back the guy from last season who helped them deal with the Dominators before. So I thought that was kind of cool. They don't really reference the fact that they ran into him before, and I don't think Ray had ever run into him, which is the interesting thing. I think it was I think it was Nate and Sarah, and then I think maybe Jackson Stein as Firestorm. I think it was the three of them that ran into that guy. But when he first showed up, I was like, oh, that's the dude that they met, in the last season when they were dealing with the Dominators. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But the characters that met him don't meet him again, so he doesn't realize that it's, the same team. It's just like different members. So I thought that was actually kind of a cool way to do that, to have that character, but he was still 100% like the bad guy in the episode. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of a, cool way to do that, where other team members actually run into him. So I actually like the way that they kind of played around with that. Of course, the little creature, like I mentioned, it's a Dominator. I was thinking it was a white Martian. I totally forgot about the Dominators, but that's because I've been watching Supergirl so much, and the Martians are like a big part of that. So I just assumed, I was like, it looks like it's a baby white Martian and stuff. It was the Dominators. That makes so much more sense, because that's in both universes, because of course Legends and Supergirl are in different Earths, but the Dominators are in both. So I was like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. I forgot about the Dominators. I was just thinking, white Martians, which would have been cool if they did somehow do a little crossover for an episode. That would have been really sweet. But, it's a Dominator, so, they're kind of going through that process. And young Ray is, feeding this Dominator and befriending it and showing him, like, singing in the rain and stuff like that. And it's like his little gross looking friend. It's such an ugly little thing, like with the CG. It was like, there were some parts where it would smile and be like, oh, it's kind of cute, but most of the time that thing just looked gross or creepy. Like, there were like the part when they did the full-on ET reference, when they opened the door and it was the Dominator was like just standing still amongst the toys. That was a reference to ET. I was like, it just looks insanely creepy right there because it was just like the eyes were just like wide open and it was kind of like doing that weird fake smile and just like frozen in place. I was like, that looks so creepy. Like I get that this is an ET reference, which is awesome and nerdy, but that just looks so freaking creepy to me. I was like, that's a creepy looking thing. And it just, the whole episode, or most of the episode, I was like, this thing just looks either gross or it looks creepy. There are like a couple of little points. I was like, okay, that doesn't look gross or creepy. It actually looks like somewhat cute or at least normal. But for the most part, it either creeped me out or it grossed me out. Like it just looked weird. But I liked it. You know, the story, like I said, was definitely entertaining with them. You know, Ray learning about himself, then just going through this whole crazy journey. Sarah getting involved towards the end of the episode after they realized, you know, there's like this other power source, which they assumed was either like the Time Bureau or, you know, the assassin or Kawasu following them. And so Sarah ends up going there with this big energy source, and it turns out it's a dominator. So it knocks her out and reads her mind, and then it's like, okay, well, you know, we got the, you know, the Mominator, as Nate was calling it, is coming your way, so I'll get the Wave Rider, we'll, you know, solve this problem. Unfortunately, we have the other side of this story, which involves Jax, Stein, and Mick, where Jax and Mick realize that Stein has been leaving the ship and erasing logs, and they thought that it was to tip off the Time Bureau, especially because that signal came in, and they just assumed it was like it's either the assassin or it's the Time Bureau. So they thought it was Stein, you know, kind of cutting deals with them and stuff. And it turns out that what he did was make basically a transmitter that, you know, can transmit throughout time, and he gave it to his daughter, and he was erasing the logs because he didn't want the team to think that he wasn't completely devoted, which, you know, it was pretty cool. I like the way it all played out, and ultimately, you know, it was like, well, Mick's main move was just like, I'm just going to rip the entire handle out, so they couldn't use the jump ship, so they had to take the entire Wave Rider so that Stein could get there to see the birth of his first grandchild. So I was like, all right, so they ended up taking that, and it's the whole time, every time they cut to them, it was like, are you sure they'll be okay? They'll be fine. It's like, man, we should probably get back with the Wave Rider. I'm sure they can handle it. And then they'll cut back, everybody's just being chased by somebody else. So it was really funny, but both the storylines were really well done. Very simple with the Stein thing. I feel like it was kind of referenced a little bit, and then it actually became a part of the episode, really only in like the last 10 to 15 minutes. But most of it was just like, you know, it's kind of referenced that Stein doesn't really want to be there anymore, or Jax would come up to him like, hey, where were you? You missed the mission briefing and stuff like that. So it was, for the most part, it was kind of just like, here's a little scene every couple of minutes, and then at the end it was like legitimately a part of the story, and it affected the other story as well, with them taking the Wave Rider and Sarah being like, all right, well, I can't bring the Wave Rider to you and just get you out of this crappy situation, so hopefully we can all kind of meet in the, you know, the same little spot. So ultimately it all worked out pretty well. Ray had to kind of listen to his younger self when it came to the baby Dominator, like, you know, you need to turn on the inhibitor again so that it can't kill all of us, because it'll, you know, lose control and take over everybody. But then it starts forcing the people to sing the song Good Morning from Singing in the Rain, and then it's like, you know, young Ray was like, see, I told you wouldn't hurt anybody, and that's because young Ray was like, hey, you know, here's this cool movie, and I'm your friend, and, you know, you don't have to like wipe out all humanity and stuff like that. So he trusted in his younger self, and Mari, you know, she was pretty cool. She actually got some moments in this episode. Oh, something I wanted to mention, because I was just unfamiliar with this. I thought that she had a totem like Amaya and Kawasa. I was wrong. That's an amulet. She's Osiris. I didn't know that. I was not familiar with that character. So that is not the same thing as, you know, Maya having her amulet. It's the same. It's not the same thing. It's not a totem like that. It's legitimately an amulet from like Egyptian times. Totally different. Didn't realize that. It just seemed that way because when they first brought her in, I just assumed it was the wind totem. I was totally wrong. So I wanted to mention that for anyone, because not a lot of people might know the Vixen stuff, and I thought I knew what I was talking about, and I did not at all. So I wanted to correct myself on that. I was not right thinking that was another one of the totems that was in line with the Vixen stuff. It was something else. So different character, different power. She has more than just like the wind stuff, but, you know, they're just starting it off, so I think that's why they're only going with that. But wanted to make sure I definitely mentioned that. But she had some good moments in here. You know, like helping younger Ray and kind of just going through the past, because it was like all we had for video games were simulations and stuff like that, military training simulations. So, you know, she got to learn a little bit about the past, have some Halloween candy. They did dress her up at the end when everyone goes in their costumes to hang out with, you know, go trick-or-treating with Ray as a kid. So they actually have her in like the Osiris outfit at the end of the episode. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I don't think we'll actually see her in that too often, but I was like, that's definitely a nice excuse to have her in the costume. So who knows if we'll actually see her utilize that a lot, but I was like, oh, that's a cool way to do it if she doesn't, if they decide to, actually update it. I do believe that might be as close as they get to like using the original costume and then be like, all right, let's do like a modern day version of it as well. So I definitely thought that was awesome to have her in there, but she was cool. She had, some minor moments kind of learning about Ray and helping him out a little bit, the kid version. And I like that. I definitely like that a lot. So that was really cool. She created the ultimate ET reference within the film when she uses her powers, and of course they ride their bikes past the moon. So it was like, all right, it's definitely there. Like I said, the part with the gumball being in the closet. So like those were the two clear ET references. The only way they could have gone further is if they were like, you like Reese's Pieces or something like that. But it was really cool. They had all the references in there. The comedy, not really good. Nate, hitting on Ray's mom was just messed up, but it was definitely funny, especially because he was doing it in front of Amaya and stuff like that. It was just like, it made it even funnier. Also, he should have steeled up. The part when he found out she was a dominator, I was like, he really needs to steel up or something, but I guess, like, I don't know, his penis just took his powers away. I don't know, because he was just standing there freaking out. It's like, if he just steeled up, he can toss a punch. He has superpowers. He can do that. And it was just like, nope, he was just freaking out. And it was like, he's all messed up. He's horny and scared, and he's just not thinking right now. So that was a really funny scene where I was like, he should just steel up. He'd be totally fine, but he didn't. And Amaya had to step in and actually do some fighting. So, just because he was just lost, I guess. But really enjoyed the episode. Of course, they wiped Ray's mom's memory, and it's just like, yep, possums. And then they just take off and they just leave her there. So that was definitely funny. I like that scene. Something that I thought was kind of weird is that they did that scene before having Mari actually talk to young Ray, and I thought it was so weird because like they flash his mom's memory away and then they leave, and then she goes into little Ray's room. I was like, they should have reversed those scenes because it seemed like it would have made more sense. Because I'm like, well, why wouldn't his mom just walk into the back room or something like that whole time they were talking? But TV, it's just how it is. But definitely a good episode. I really enjoyed it. Cool to see the Dominators come back. The little reference that they had with the secret agent and stuff. Then I don't know why this was so weird to me, because I was like, they explained it towards the end of the episode, but it was so weird that they were in like it was like a rec facility. It was like a YMCA sort of deal, and I was like, where are they? Because I thought they were just in a legitimate facility at first, and then when they were talking, when they first like locked up the little Dominator and they were using the device on them, I saw a basketball rim in the background, and then I was like, where are they at? And I got super confused because I didn't realize that before, and I was just like, this isn't a facility, so why are they in a school? Like, I hope they acknowledge this, because that's a basketball rim, and then on the other side is a basketball rim, so they're in a basketball court right now. Where in the world are they located within the realm of this city? So I was glad they explained that, where it was like they must have taken over the rec facility and made it into like a little base or something, because I was like, I'm so glad they put that line in there, because that would have just been weird. Like, you need to kind of acknowledge that they're not in just a legitimate base, because there's freaking basketball rims and stuff around. So that was weird, because the whole way through I just thought they were in a base until that scene where they talk and they do like an angle, and I was like, oh, there's a basketball rim. They aren't just at some building that they own in that area. It's like they took over a place. So that like caught me off guard for a second, and I was like, I'm glad they actually made that a part of the story, where it's like, yeah, they must have changed the facility into like a small base of operations for a minute because of the case they were taking on with knowing the Dominator was there. So I was like, all right, I can appreciate that they at least threw that little line in. That's all it took was a second, but it definitely caught me off guard when I saw that basketball rim, because the whole episode I just assumed that they had a base that could have been, it's TV, so it's like it could be 20 miles away and they'll get there in 2 minutes, So it's like, I was just kind of TV displacement, where it's like, yeah, sure, they just get there and that's, where it's at. So it was just super funny seeing that. It's like, nope, they made it a part of the story. They were legitimately just in the town, and they took over this place for a little bit. Well, I guess during the day and during the night. They didn't take it down during the day. But I was like, okay, I'm glad they put that line in there just to actually make it a part of it. But all in all, I would definitely say it was a good episode. Definitely funny. Definitely had some, fairly emotional stuff with Ray and him figuring out some elements from his past that he wasn't exactly familiar with like he thought he was. Definitely had some of the emotional elements with Stein. Of course, having a grandchild and stuff like that. With him, it was much happier. It wasn't Ray like having like this sort of sad realization, like, oh, these people weren't my friends. I didn't have any friends. My mom didn't really care as much about my stuff as she, said she did. And it was more worry. But for him, it was like, oh, I just thought she loved exactly how I was, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So definitely love the way they did it. This was, they did this 2 times tonight because they did it with Flash as well, but there's a celebration with cigars in this episode, and the one thing that really caught me off guard during that scene with Stein and Jax and Mick is that Stein's grandchild is named Ronnie, and I was trying to fill in some blanks myself, and I was like, okay, because we have to go back through it, and it's like, alright, so his daughter is a certain age, so with this new version, her being an anachronism, she knew who Ronnie was, I would imagine, but at the same time, I don't really know how far into it she is with the truth, because he gave her like this thing where it's like, yeah, this can, radio through time, so I assume she does know the truth compared to like his wife didn't know like anything, because it was just like, I just left my wife, and Jackson's like, I left my mom for 6 months. So I was like, I don't know if I still don't understand 100% if their families know that they were jumping through time, or if they really explained that whole fact of the matter. But I would have to assume, considering Jax and Stein like have that connection as Firestorm, I would assume his daughter knows. And then it's like, all right, did she know about Ronnie because he was dead a long time ago, and then he came back to life for like a little, or he was dead, and then he came back a bit in Flash, and then they were Firestorm, and then they weren't, and it was just like, why is the kid named Ronnie? Like, that was like all I could think of when he mentioned that the kid was named Ronnie. I was like, I get that that's a reference because it's Firestorm, but I'm just like, I don't understand why the kid's name was Ronnie. And they didn't like make any real reference to it where it was like, it's because she knew Ronnie and how it was like the first Firestorm and maybe she was close to him. And I was like filling in so many blanks that just don't exist. I was like, why did they name that kid Ronnie? I just don't know. But I guess the whole point was just the fact that it was a reference. It was like, oh, you have Jack, Stein, and Ronnie, which are like the 3 names of the Firestorm characters. So I guess that was why they did that. But I was just like, that's sweet. That seems so weird because I was trying to connect. Like, did she know Ronnie since she's at this point now been there through all of it? And it's just like, that's super confusing to me to try to make up that whole storyline in my head. But that's all I was doing during that scene. As soon as he was like, and this baby Ronnie, and I was like, whoa, I gotta make up a story real quick. So that's what I was doing during that scene. I was like, it's so weird that they chose to do that. And like I said, it could have just been a reference to the fact that those are the 3 main characters as far as the TV shows go, as to who Firestorm is. It's Stein, Ronnie, and then Jax. So I assume that was the only reason they did that, was just for that reference to have the, like I said, the 3 named characters like all together, even if that wasn't Ronnie Raymond. Still, I guess that was the point, but it was just super weird. I was just like, why'd they do that? Why Ronnie? Why? So that definitely stood out to me. But all in all, good episode. We didn't really see the Time Bureau at all. We didn't get the assassin stuff. It was just like, here's a little thing with Ray. Early on, he was trying to do like the team building exercise because they have a new member. So she kind of does that a little bit with him at the end to kind of help him out because he went through some emotional stuff. So it was definitely cool. And the team does seem to be, kind of building up a bit. So I like where we're headed. Of course, I would love to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And of course, with the ending that we had where Jax officially decides he wants to find a way to break up Firestorm, I would love to know your theories on where we're headed with that. A lot of people have said maybe we'll just get another person to come back in. I don't think it'll be Ronnie. It would be interesting if they did do that again, where it's like, surprise, he is once again alive. But there are other people that have been Firestorm. So I feel like they might just either add in another character, or they'll, legitimately, because he was like, I kind of want to break up Firestorm. So basically it would be like that way they don't even have that psychic connection or anything like that. So if they go that far with it, maybe Jax would legitimately just become like the engineer of the team, which totally makes sense. That's where he's at right now anyways, the Wave Rider, or with the Wave Rider. So he could just be that part and then, still has the skill, because he goes out all the time without Stein anyway. So, like they do that a lot where I'm like, this kind of doesn't make sense, where they should definitely be together 100%. And it would be like, yeah, just Jax went that way and Stein went that way, or Stein stayed on the ship and Jax was the only one that went out, or vice versa. It's just like, yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, guys. Sometimes it does because, Jax might be working on the ship and that's why he stayed. But sometimes it's just like, Stein just didn't go. And it's just like, okay. And it typically is, the actor thing, and that's why he can't he's just not there enough to be in the whole episode. But when it comes to the context of the story, it's like, yeah, that makes it make less sense. So if that's how they do it, considering, like I said, he wants to break up Firestorm, I don't think we'll see another version. I think that'll be a way for them to get rid of Firestorm as a character, because I know we have other heroes coming in as well. So it's another way to kind of balance out the team, where it's like, okay, you have Firestorm breaking up officially, we'll still have Jax as, the human character who's the engineer for the Wave Rider, and just naturally a part of the team because he still fights, hand to hand. And then they can bring in another character and it's not insanely overpowered. So I feel like that's where it might be headed. I don't think we're going to see Firestorm at all. And if they do bring Firestorm back, I don't think it'll be until like next season where they get a new character and then kind of redo the whole idea of it. But yeah, for now, my theory is that they're going to officially kind of just end Firestorm. Stein is going to leave the show and Jax will be there on the Wave Rider, but there will not be a new person to come in for Firestorm. I think that's like officially done, at least until next season. So that's my theory on it, but we'll love to know yours. And of course, want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.